Okay, what I'm going to do here on this video today is I'm going to get this ProBoat 48-inch 8S SupersonicWake wrapped. Once again, this should be the first and only, as far as I know, wraps for the SupersonicWake. This boat that I ordered in for the studio is actually sold to a customer already. This customer directed me to put a specific graphic kit on it with a specific finish. So I'm going to do that. This installation is very similar to the 6S Sonicwake with a few different options and changes that are important enough that I needed to make another video to go over. I'm not going to spend a ton of time going over the tools that I use. I want you to click on the link in the description that will take you to the getting started video, which will tell you what tools I'm using, where to get them, how much they are, things like that. And with that said, I just want to jump right into this installation, try and breeze through this as fast as I can. If you need a supplemental video because you want to, see every step of the way, problems, solutions that are common, I would advise you to also watch the 6S Sonicwake video. I'll put that link in the description as well. This one is going to be more geared toward specific differences between the 6S and 8S that I have to cover that are indigenous to the 8S. So in a lot of this film, I'm just going to speed the film up while I'm doing the install. Again, if you want to know what I'm doing during those sped up sections, you can watch the 6S installation video, which I really took a lot of time to produce, and I don't want to go through and produce another video saying the same things again. So with that said, let me just go over a few of the differences on the 8S that I noticed when I templated this model. The first thing that stood out to me was the side, and I realized that this boat is black, very black here, so you're not going to be able to see the seam very well, but yes, there is a seam where ProBoat, brings the top and the bottom of the hull together. On the 6S, that seam stuck out, I think 1/8 of an inch on the top. So I split the graphic on the 6S, whereas on the 8S, I couldn't really do that. There was no point. I think it would have looked worse if I split it because there's no relief off that upper lip. So on the 8S, we're going to cover the entire thing. If you look at your 8S, you'll notice that the stock graphics from the factory also covered the entire thing. So that's change one. Change two is the rollover holes right here. I did listen to a lot of my clients who purchased graphics for the 6S model over the years, and they said that sometimes when, the graphic came down over this ridge and they warmed it up, it was hard to align these holes. Also, these holes, I believe, are hand cut at the factory. I don't think that it's part of the mold. I think someone actually goes in here with a jig and dremels it out, which means there is going to be some human error variation involved in a lot of the holes there. So what I chose to do this time is not cut any of these portholes out. You're going to install the graphic. Then at the end, you're going to take your X-Acto knife and you can trim it out. Now you might say, I don't want to trim anything out. Well, let me tell you, this is going to make your life so much easier because you don't have to sit here and align these holes. And as far as trimming it out, it's not like you're taking the X-Acto and just, freewheeling around those openings. You can take the X-Acto and do a nice clean cut by using the blade and running it against the inside edge of those rollover holes. That said, a few more differences. On the back, the antenna port and the other ports are siliconed from the factory. I tried to take them out because what I typically like to do is make the graphic just lay down, have you trim it out, put those things back in. They aren't really removable. I don't want people, calling me up or emailing me saying, hey, I couldn't get the things out and I broke it, blah, blah, blah. So I did have to cut the holes out of the graphic for those 3 holes on the back here. Now, I realize, and I just said there is some shifting and variation to where these holes were hand drilled at the factory. So I came up with a solution for that as well to help you out. And I'll get to that a little bit later. So without any further ado, as you can see, I've already taken all the graphics off the boat. I have prepped it and cleaned it with 99% isopropyl alcohol. It's completely oil and dirt free for the most part. I'll do my final prep before we start to put the graphics on. I want to talk about the cap. As you can see, you know, without the decals on, the cap still has a painted yellow and blue skin. You will see those colors through the wrap where the relief cuts are so that the wrap can come down and around that. If you want to get around that, you've kind of got two options. You can, you know, take this yellow and blue off, spray it with some RC paint, or you can do the marker method, which is just basically taking a black Sharpie after you're all done, and you can kind of just fill in those little gaps there. Not the cleanest method in the world, but if you really don't feel like painting your cap, going through all that hassle of the prep work, you know, things like that, you can just use a Sharpie. I've done it, and when you stand back, you have no idea. It just looks like those gaps are black, like the rest of the boat. So, I think I've covered everything here. One more thing. This is a huge boat, as you can see. I mean, my wingspan here is, you know, I don't even think I'm on frame completely here. It is a huge boat. If you're not used to installing graphics, it can be challenging and intimidating to have this huge graphic sat on top of here. You do have to get it down over these bends. I know a lot of you guys who bought the 6S kits over the years, you know, you wrote me and you said, oh my gosh, you made it so easy because the template was spot on. And I really appreciate that. That meant a lot to me because I put days and days into making those templates. On this one, here's what happens. So the more linear graphic you have, the more opportunity you have to make that graphic stretch. So when you're warming it up and you're, you know, laying it on here, you have, for every inch of graphic, let's say you can stretch it a 64th of an inch. So the more graphic you have here, we've got more room for error. So originally when I templated this, I thought I'm going to make it a two-piece. So from the nose back to about here is where I wanted to make the front. So you would install the front, then the back, or vice versa. And then I thought, well, that's not going to make everybody happy, right? It's just, some people are going to be upset about that because they don't want to see a seam here. Now, I will say that ProBoat did seam their graphics. When I took them off, they were seamed, both the top and the sides. So the idea I came up with was, and I'll put this up on the screen here so you can see it, I laid out some trim lines for you. So before you start your installation, you can make a decision. Do you want to go for the gold and try to do it all in one piece, deal with any stretching that might come about, or do you want to make it a little bit easier on yourself? And I have delineated some cut lines where you need to make a straight cut with a ruler to split the graphic. Now, when I say split the graphic, you don't have to split the sides. They're on their own. They'll be fine. I'm talking about this top piece, okay? You don't have to split the cap. That's all one piece. You don't have to split the cap sides. I'm talking about from the front to the back. Now, the line I set up for your trim is very important because it's in a strategic spot where it misses these water intake holes on this side, and it'll be the least noticeable where I placed those cut lines. So you can slice them if you want, install the back, install the front. If you did a good job, they will, the two graphics will literally butt right up against each other. Even if you get just a little bit of an overlap where they meet, you can trim the overlap back. The only downfall to that overlap is the artwork may be a 16th off, may not register quite perfect, but you get the idea. You have the option. The other thing I did was, on the 6S, a lot of people told me, you know, hey, your cutouts for the screws and the other ports on the back, they're good, but on my boat, it was shifted just this way a little bit, or this way. Again, we're dealing with variances here, I think, from the factory where someone is sitting here with a drill, wherever these are made, and there's just the slightest little bit of deviation as to where they decide to put those holes. So to combat that variation, I made some little circle graphics Again, I'll throw that up and you can see them, and I'll put an arrow to them so you can identify. I made white ones and black ones. Personally, I would like the black ones if it were my boat because it looks like a nice clean shadow. But what they are is they're designed to fit perfectly snug around every one of the openings. I actually calipered the thumb screws and the other items so that you get a nice clean drop down. And they're designed to go over any deviation that looks ugly on the base graphic, okay? So let's say your graphic is shifted a little bit when you put it down over the thumb screws or these ports back here. You know, you can see an 1/8 of an inch gap between on the front compared to the back. These are designed to just sit down straight over top if you want. They come in 2 sizes and 2 colors. So hopefully that makes this installation a lot easier for you guys, gives you more options. Without any further ado, I am going to just jump right into this. I am going to do the full installation. I'm not going to cut it. This is a Patriotic Seduction kit with metallic flake finish. The first thing I'm going to do is the top. I do have an overhead camera set up because in the past, these have been really hard for me to install while on camera by myself because I got to lean to get a good job into this. And being that a customer bought this from me, I want to do a good job. So I think that the overhead camera is really going to help get that extra view for you guys so that, you know, if I'm leaning over the boat and you can't quite see what I'm doing, I'm going to put the other camera up in the corner of the screen so you can kind of, you know, move your eyes from one screen to the other if you need to. Okay, so as I said, I am going to kind of blow through this pretty quickly. If you need all the nitty-gritty details about prep work and things like that, you can use the link in the description and you can go to the 6S video where I cover that more in depth. This is just 99% isopropyl alcohol. You can get that anywhere. And I'm just using a lint-free shop rag that I get off of Amazon. Again, these rags are in the Start Here video, link in the description. In fact, all the tools that I'm using are in the Start Here video, link is in the description. So I'm really only focused on getting the top cleaned right now because I will do a final clean on the sides when I get to that part. I do have a lot of dust in here because I have some dogs that live in the house, in the studio. They keep me company. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this tack cloth. Again, you can get it at Walmart, Home Depot, Lowe's, also in the video, the Start Here video. And this tack cloth is just going to grab all of the fine little pieces of dander or dog hair, whatever is just floating through the ether here in the studio, and prevent it from getting underneath the graphic. Okay, I think what I'm going to do is actually take this off and I'm going to clean this inside edge here because I can see that there is definitely some dust that got down in on this edge. And even though the graphic isn't going to go down in this edge, I don't want it to grab any of the dirt that's just sitting right there. Okay, while I'm here, I'm just gonna get this edge too. Looks like I got a little piece of a sticker there. Now I am gonna put this back on here just because I don't really like to spray soapy water, which is what I'm gonna use for my application fluid, into the electronics if I can help it. There we go. Okay, I'm going to put the ISO away. And what I have here is Rapid Tack application fluid. Again, that's in the Get Started video. I did add a little bit of extra Dawn dish detergent to this, like 3 or 4 drops, What that's going to do is give me a little bit more slidability, because the wrap attack for the purposes of this type of adhesion, which is strong, is doesn't have quite the viscosity that I like. So if you are using the wrap attack versus the soapy water, you can test it. If it feels like it's getting too tacky too quick, just add a little bit of dish detergent. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just spray this boat down as wet as you would like to spray it down. I am going to get spray over everything, even the cap here. The reason for that is if I accidentally drop the graphic onto the cap, it's not going to stick, okay? My hands are clean. I've already washed them. They don't have any dirt, dust, grime, grease. I didn't change my oil today. It's not jammed up into my fingernails, which will cause, it'll transfer to the graphic and cause it to not adhere the way you want it to. So I'm going to go off camera. I'm going to get the main graphic and I'm going to bring it back over here and we'll get going. Okay, so what I like to do is I like to lay my graphics upside down on the boat. And the first thing you want to do is you want to get it sprayed down with your solution, because it will grab a hold of anything that's fallen through the sky, you know, dust, whatever the case may be. In fact, I have a little bit here and I can just sort of squirt it off of there and the dust just rolls off, okay? So here we go. Now, this can actually stick to, you know, you can fold it over. It's not going to stick to itself. We're going to fold it over. We need to feed the antenna through the hole. My overhead camera is doing its job here. Now, here's where we just need to take our time and align the graphic before we get too wily with squeegeeing the water out. So what I like to do, or what I've done when I was doing test fitting on this 8S, is I like to get this front edge right here just off the quarter round. So just back from the quarter round, because you don't want it, this is too thick for it to actually go down over that quarter round. Once you do that, I like to just put my finger here and then just move this front around until I get the nose perfectly centered. And this is what it should look like on the 8S, okay? You can see right there. Once you do that, this center seam right here, everything's centered here. I've got that slight distance there. We can set it down in the center here, okay? So I'm just gonna go like this, and I'm gonna work over one squeegee width to the right and to the left. You can see the water coming out, water comes out, graphics make contact. So now I'm going to move back, and really all I want to focus on for now, first of all, I want to make sure I'm in view for you guys here. You can move this like this. There we go. That should do it. So now we're gonna lift this up, and we're gonna just follow this edge, this quarter round edge around where it meets the cap. And I'm just going to use my fingers to feel and keep it off that quarter round until we get all the way back. And I'm just going to lay it down here. There we go. So again, I'm just going to follow it back. You can already kind of see that it wants to tack, okay? Even though it's still wet. My holes line up. Again, they will line up on this boat because I templated off this boat. So if your boat, somebody drilled these holes, you know, differently, they may not be as perfect as mine. And that's where those extra stickers are going to come in handy that I talked about earlier. Okay? So really all I want you to worry about right now is this upper edge going back. I'm actually using my finger to sort of kiss it here to the hull. So now once I have that done, what we can do, and you'll notice there's a relief cut here, okay? There's a lot of tension right here. And that relief cut, you can see it just pushed in. That's why it's there. So now we can take the squeegee and start to work our way down this ridge like this. I don't want to add heat quite yet. Now, it's about 72 in the studio right now, and you may not think that the ambient air temperature when you're doing the installation is all that important, but I am here to tell you it is darn important. This material is so susceptible to the slightest changes in temperatures. So there's a happy zone where it's just warm enough that it'll go over these curves for you. But if it's too warm, it'll be really flimsy and you'll trap more water. If it's too cold, you won't trap hardly any water because it's so rigid, and when you squeegee it, it just pushes the water out. It doesn't create little ripples where the water can get caught. But if it's too cold, it won't go down over the edges, right? So you got to dance in that happy zone at all times, and only use heat when you absolutely need it. And you'll know when you need it because you're going to get hard ripples that just don't want to sit down for you. And that's the calling card for we need to add some heat. So ideal temperature, I would think, for a beginner installer, somebody who hasn't done this before, 78 degrees, 77 degrees. That's where I would like to be probably. So a lot of my anxiety is already over because this first down ridge here is the hardest part. Now I want you to pay attention to what I'm doing here. Let me get in frame. I do not want you to bridge this gap flat and then push this down. This is designed so that you have to, I need to squeegee this first. You have to come down here first before doing anything with this outer band. Now, why is that? Watch what happens when I push it down. The graphic gets pulled in. Ready? See how it's getting pulled in? So I actually have calculated in to the template how much that graphic is going to get pulled in when you do it in this fashion. And when it gets pulled in, it's going to align nearly perfectly now where I want it to for you on this outer edge. So you push down, it pulls in. I'm going to take this rag and use it wrapped around my finger to come down this edge, just like this. I want to make sure I got all the moisture out. Okay, I got the boat spun around because I want you to see what I'm doing on the back here. I'm going to give it a little spray because things have evaporated. And again, I push down on this edge first. You'll see it sort of flares out right here. Now we can push down on this back. Just like that. Look how clean and tight that came together right there. See? So that's what you're paying for in a $170 graphic kit, is the time and effort it took to get this template made and make your life easy. So now we can fold this down. This is a small enough piece. I feel comfortable just using my hand. And again, now that this is all down, all the way across there, we can finish it off, by doing that. But what I want to actually do is I want to pull this up and re-wet this down because I am losing my moisture. And what we're going to do is I'm going to speed up the film and just do the other side. It's the same thing I just did here. You don't need to see it again. I won't take your time doing that. And then we'll regroup and go to the next step. Okay, so I have things fairly buttoned up on this other side. This is the side with the roll holes for the water intake. I did see some issues that I just wanted to bring to your attention while doing this other side. And when I say I did the other side, I did it all. It's all the way down. I will show that to you in a little bit. So here's where we left off, right? So what we need to do is, again, just start from somewhere in the middle because we're going to work like this. Just want to make sure I'm in both cameras, and I am. And we're going to use the squeegee as much as we can without heating. Now, the first few push downs you do with the squeegee, it's going to pop back up, especially if your room isn't very warm, okay? What's happening is the water's coming out, but it's getting to the edge and it's just sucking back in when it lifts up. So you can take a dry cloth like this. It'll do two things. It'll reduce the friction as you use your finger to push it down. And the minute, or the second, I should say, that water comes out that front edge, it'll soak it up so it doesn't get sucked back in. Going to switch back and forth between my squeegee and my rag. There we go. I have one rag there that's pretty damp from doing the other side. I like to use a dry one so that it definitely soaks the water up the second it comes out. And as much as you can, try to do a push down like this instead of a back and forth. You do see me do a back and forth once in a while, but that's because I know it's already down. What happens if you do a back and forth before that initial push down is you can trap water on your rounded edges a lot more easily. Okay, I'm going to move the craft back so you guys can see what I'm doing here. That looks good. Again, you can either use your finger like I am or a squeegee. I got a ripple here, so what I want to do is I want to sort of start where the problem ripple is and work it towards each relief cut here and here, which you can see on the overhead. Looks like some of this popped up here since I last worked it, so I just need to come back. One tip is don't let your rag hit the graphic like I just did, because you could get some fibers pretty bad in there. I do have a water pocket right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop it while it's cold and just let the pressure from the water come out on its own. So in order for me to see it, I got to get just the right angle of light. Let's see here. There it is. And when you do that, when the vinyl is cold, the vinyl is so rigid when it's cold that it pushes down the bubble for you on its own and the water just comes out. If you warm it up to do something like this, you run the risk of distorting the vinyl from the bubble being lifted up too much. So try to keep it room temperature when you're doing your bubble popping. Right, go. It's looking pretty good. Just going to do a little bit of a creep underneath here with my blade because I got all the water moved to right here and there it comes out. There we go. Just gave it a little pathway to get out instead of a pinhole. That looks great. Now I'm just going to take my finger back over this inside turn Make sure I don't feel any big bubbles. Seems pretty good. Okay, I'm going to go back to my squeegee. And I'm sort of giving it, you know, a roll down with my thumb here. Now on the other side, I did notice that I did need to use a little bit of heat. So I use my hand as sort of a, you know, a distance tester, just enough to get that vinyl warmed up. We're gonna keep it up high, and we're gonna come down high and overlapping where we already did, and come down. And you can see that little bit of heat really makes it sit. Okay, now I'm gonna do the front here. Get this in frame for you guys. Move some of my tools out of the way. Here we go. Now you notice I didn't use my hand as a tester there. I probably should for on camera, but I guess after 20 some years, I just sort of know by feel how much heat I need. I would suggest using your hand so you don't overheat it. If you're burning your hand, you're using way too much heat. Okay, just checking my work. Looks like, you notice that I'm constantly checking this dip right here. I want to make sure that this dip is down before I adhere this front face. Because if I don't, and I've got a little bit of a bridge from the graphic there where that dip is, it's going to be really hard for me to, even with warmth, push that graphic down and back inside that dip. So I want the dip down first, all the bubbles out if I can, and then I focus on this outer edge. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is I'm going to get the craft turned back around a little bit here. Make sure I'm in both frames and the boat doesn't fall off the table. That would be good. And we're just going to tidy up the back a little bit here. Make sure everything is down. Not really a big deal. There's a ton of water sitting back here because there's a little bit of a crevice. So I'm just going to use my dry rag to sort of soak some of those things up a little bit. Check my edges here. This is all good. That was really easy there because it's just one big flat spot. Okay. Now the next thing I want to do, now that everything is basically down on that big piece, is I want to trim out the portholes here. So I'm going to show you how I do that. And while I do that, I'm going to put a brand new X-Acto blade on. I want my blade to be super sharp, okay? So I'm just going to use my hand, feel where the first one is, get myself in frame for you guys here. So you're going to go down through and you're going to kind of push against the plastic a little bit. Now your first cut's probably not going to be, you know, the most beautiful one. What we'll do is we'll come back and we'll clean it up after we start to open the port up a little bit. Okay, so now we can use the tip and just sort of follow the plastic. And if you do it right, you don't cut into the plastic at all. You just use it as a guide. It may take a couple tries to just get the feel of that. And there we go. And the next one, just going to start it like that. There's that one. And on to the next one. Now, I will say that when I was doing this side, the way the vinyl is bridged and lays over these holes, it looks like huge air or water pockets. And it was really freaking me out there for a little while, until I realized, oh, it's just the rollover intakes. I think what I'm going to do is offer some included in these kits, I think, not a guarantee, but I think, is actually some dress-up graphics that you can put over top of these holes here. Because even this plastic is, you can tell it's just been cut by hand, and it doesn't have that perfect rectangular oval type shape. And I think if I make some graphics that, like I talked about with these thumb screws, goes over top of this, that's just black, like a thin 1/8" black, it'll give the eye a nice clean line to focus on instead of this choppiness. In fact, I think I will do that, and I'll put that in the video so you can see the final outcome of that. Now, one thing I noticed was my relief cut here just happened to just lay on there. So what I want to do is try and close that gap. And in order to do that, you can just heat up the vinyl. And then what I like to call this is just a smudge. I smudge them together until they kiss. Now, you will need to keep it heated, keep working it. And it is important to do both sides like this, because you can't expect one side to travel all the way. You got to kind of meet in the middle. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little piece of tape there just to hold that until it cools. And once it cools, it should stay. And what I'm doing here is I'm just bridging the tape across like that. Now that's going to hold for me until it cools and that adhesive isn't so warm and gooey, and then it should hold there for me permanently. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is I want to get this side piece on. Again, this piece will go on in one shot. We don't need to split it. So I'm going to wet it down. I'm going to pull that piece off of my sheet. Going to lay it on top of the boat and wet it down. Okay. I am going to need to switch to the other side. Okay. Hopefully you guys can see most of this. I'll get down low so you can see what I'm up to here. So what I want to do is I want to align the artwork where it matters. And where it matters in this particular theme is right here where the girl is sort of laying along the side of the boat. So I'm getting the top of her hair and then her swimsuit lined up there. Now, what will happen is because this piece is so long, it may stretch on you a little bit. On the front, where it terminates up here, you're not going to notice it because I left some extra room. You may notice it on the back. There might be just a little overhang, and yes, there is. So we will need to trim this back piece based on our alignment and stretching, just a touch, and I will show you how to do that. I have a pair of very sharp scissors here. I have a pair of very sharp scissors, And I'm going to pull this back and eyeball. You need to take about 1/8 of an inch off. So while it's wet, I'm just going to take my scissors. I'll do the round over like was originally there. It's really easy to cut. It's basically like construction paper. And then round over the top. That looks pretty good. I'm going to take a little bit more off the top. Okay, there we go. I am going to introduce a little bit of heat just to stretch this back a touch at the bottom. And in order to get that stretch, I need to heat up about 1 foot, just a little bit. That'll give me the stretch that I need. And then we can start to squeegee. So I want to keep a nice even distance between my graphics here. That'll give you the best look. So probably pull this up just a little bit, give myself a little bit more distance between the two. Probably going to need a little bit of heat here. And again, I'm just worried about affixing the top. Some heat. You can see there's a ripple there, a big lump, so it needs a little bit of heat to set down. Let's split that sort of in half if we can. It needs some more heat. There we go. Now it wants to sit down. Okay, and we'll move on to the front. Because it's still wet, you know, we can pull it back, and because we have half of it fixed down, it'll save our spot. It's not going to fall off. Again, I'm just trying to get a nice even gap. That is the objective here. Giving it a little bit of a stretch on the front because there were some ripples here, which should help those ripples stretch out. A little bit of warmth just to get it set. Okay, so I'm just running my thumb across this upper edge to get it locked down into place because I don't want it to slide. First. I like the way that looks as it is right there. So I'll push this across here. And there's a little bit of a seam there. There was just enough seam there where I could get my squeegee in spots, kind of in that crack. This side doesn't seem to want to be quite as forgiving. So I'll just have to go over it like normal. On the other side, I was able to sort of get this in here and press that down in, but the gap isn't as big on this side. Okay, looking pretty good. Just going to do some final touch-up work. So back here, I was able to warm it up and find that seam and run the felt edge of my squeegee in there to get the graphic down. But the seams tends to disappear about halfway through. Just using my hand here instead of the squeegee because that seam keeps the squeegee sort of lifted up off. I'm just feeling for air pockets or water pockets that I need to get out. I don't feel anything. Okay, so here's where we are with the 8S boat at this point. Stand back a little bit here so I can get everything in view. Things are looking pretty good. As you can see, all we have left is the top cap. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to get this on my upper camera so you can see, and let's just dive right in. I have my mixture here. I already have cleaned the cap. I'm going to pull the piece off camera. Okay, here it is. I'll lay it upside down. This will be the most difficult piece that you do, I think, on the kit itself. All right, now that both sides have been saturated, we're going to flip it over and let's switch over to our overhead view here. So I want to, again, align the back so that it's just off the edge of that quarter round. And once I do that, I'm going to just fold this down and then this down and feel. I got more of a gap on this side, so I need to lift up and just give it a little shift that way. That's much better. Okay, that feels good. My back looks good here, and we're good to go. So I'm going to start with my squeegee here and all the way down, overlap, and all the way down. And I'm just going to work that all the way back. Like so. We'll need just a little bit of heat there. Not so much. It is exceptionally cold in the studio today, so I am having to use heat in spots where some of you probably won't have to. Now up here, you're definitely going to need to use some heat, and we will get to that and why. This will need to be stretched just a little bit across this dome. I'm going to re-wet it. So we're going to heat it up here, and then we're going to sort of stretch it this way as we come down. This is one of those spots where it can be helpful to have some help. Have somebody here with the heat gun. Okay, so I got it warmed up, and now I'm just going to give it a stretch. There we go. Need a little bit more heat. Notice I have my hand on this piece here. I am by myself doing this, so if you have help, you might be able to have somebody hold that for you. But it does require a little bit of a stretch just to get it around that dome. So I'm just taking my time. And it's going inch by inch as I give it a little bit of a stretch. I can feel that the cap is warm from the heat, and that's a good thing as we get up here, because it does take a lot of smudging and stretching. So now if you're watching this and you're, used to doing car wraps or something, you're probably thinking, why do you have to do all that? Well, if you're just tuning in late to the game, this material is about 16 mil thick, and that's why. I realized that if this were a thin car wrap, it would go on there, but it would also distort, and you wouldn't be able to have this beautiful print because it's so thin. It would just stretch and not look good, nor would it last when you're bashing through the lake at 70 miles per hour. Okay, so I got this whole half done on this side. Now all I have to do is this side. I'm just going to give it some more juice. We're going to heat it up again. And watch my hands. I'm doing a stretch. Okay, and while it's warm, I'm squeegeeing it down. Good. Did it? Got a little bit of a ripple here, so I'm just warming it up and using my hands to part that ripple apart a little bit to relax it. The ripple was right there at the relief cut, which is where it should be. We just take our time. Everything at this point is down, so I'm just kind of going around, feeling for any bubbles. Couple ripples back here where I didn't add enough heat. What? What? Basically just checking my work. All right, I am happy with that. What I want to do here while I have this on camera is try and suture up this gap here so you don't have to either use the Sharpie that I talked to you about or maybe even paint the cap prior to putting this on. So I'm going to warm it up. I'm going to grab my Scotch tape again. Just set it there. And I'm going to just start to smudge these two things together using my dry palm. I can tell I need more heat. Okay, there we go. Now it's moving for me. And they just sort of migrate together. And you have to do this before it cools too much. Otherwise, you'll need to heat it back up. But there I was able to completely close the gap. I'm going to get my tape ready here before it cools. As it cools, it wants to contract back. So I go like this, and then I just put my tape on it, and it holds it until it cools. And we'll just work our way right up like this. And the next piece of tape, like a suture, and we can close that gap. And one more on the front. I admit, this Scotch tape is hard to get off. You got to really pick at it with your X-Acto knife once it cools. But in my opinion, it's well worth the effort. I'm going to do the same thing on this back one. So we're suturing them together. Then we just throw a piece of tape on there to hold it. You might even be able to get away with something like blue painter's tape. I just don't happen to have any of that with me in the studio right now. Do the same thing on this one. There we go. And a little bit of tape. Cool. Tie up some loose ends. I'm going to soak this extra water up that's sitting down here with my rag. There we go. There we go. So let's go on to the next pieces that we have, and that's this right here. I'm going to go ahead and pull that off, and like the rest of our pieces, we'll spray it down. Overhead camera, do your thing. Now on this, I like to start by aligning the cutouts for the thumb screws. But in the end, what you really want to do is have your edges as even as possible. Because remember, we have those stickers that we can put over top the thumb screws to clean that up if need be. But I will tell you, this is relatively good. You don't want to let it overlap, or overhang, I should say, the cap itself. So just make sure you're just off that quarter round edge of the cap, just like you did on the rest of the boat. And this piece is relatively simple. We can just take this. It's flat, so there's not a lot of issue here. Whoops. Hard to see over that edge there when I'm recording. There we go. That looks great. And again, you do have that yellow there. If you painted the cap before, this will just look like a nice clean shadow down there. If you didn't paint it and it bothers you, you're going to have to use like a Sharpie marker, a little fine tip Sharpie marker, and get in there. Okay, so I have finished the top, and just looking up at my ceiling camera looks really good. Why don't we get into some discussion now about those extra little circle stickers that I told you about. So if you look at this, you will see, and maybe you can't quite see because the camera has some distortion because it's so high up, but these cutouts aren't, around the thumb screws, aren't perfectly centered. Now you may say, well, why don't you center them when you did the template? Well, I tried, but every boat is different. So what I did to get around that for you guys is I gave you some extras. These extras are little circles that are cut out as I described in the beginning of the video, and they are in 2 sizes. Now, you can use whatever size you want, but I always like to think that less is more. Unless your shift is so big that you have such a gap in this thumb screw to the edge of the circle cut here, I would go with the smaller diameter of the 2. So I'm going to grab that off the sheet and then we'll discuss. So here is my, I'll probably put it in the white here so you can see, my little circle sticker. It's just stuck to the end of my X-Acto knife. And you'll see that it's just the right size, that it snugly fits down around there. And you can center it just like that. And you can probably see on camera here how much cleaner that looks. It really does a nice job of dressing it up. And, you know, if you ordered a metallic flake finish, those circles will come with a metallic flake finish in black and white. I always err towards the black. You know, you may say here, yeah, white would have been better, but then you get over here and white's not going to look as good because you're covering up the blue. If it was all white, yeah, you probably want to use the white ones. But the black to me just looks like a nice clean black body line. So my small ones just covered the gap. And when I mean just, I'm talking like it was a 64th of an inch extra that I had to overhang. So make sure you, you know, if you have calipers or a ruler, just measure how much you're going to need and then measure the 2 different sizes and figure out which one is going to be best for you. Why don't we go ahead while I'm at it and we'll do the these ports here and the antenna. And again, on this, I'm using the smaller. Perfect fit. Absolutely perfect fit. And let's move on to the antenna next. And we'll slip it through and down. Perfect fit. That really dresses that up nicely. All right, we have a couple pieces left to do. One is this back piece here, super simple. I will do it very quickly. Here it is. We'll lay that in here. Just going to use my finger wrapped on this rag to finish that off. There we go. All right, so all we have left is the windshield. And the reason I saved the windshield for last is because what I like to do with the windshield is center it based on previous graphics installed. All the graphics are installed, so it's an easy job to do. We can kind of wiggle around. If you try to install that windshield before you put the cap graphic on and these, you would just be guessing as to where it went. Now you will notice that in some spots, the new cap graphic kind of extends down below where the original windshield line was, and that is by design. So if you installed this and you're looking at it and you can kind of see that the cap graphic goes down, there's just a little recess right here where the windshield sits in. That is by design. The reason I did that is because there's a little gap here where there was no windshield graphic. And originally when I templated the 6S and now the 8S, I wanted to bring this graphic down in this little strip and it just didn't work out. It looked terrible. And I thought, well, why do I have to, you know, be relegated to where that is? I can just make the windshield graphic bridge over it. You won't really see it. And that's what I ended up doing. So I'm going to spray this down and then I'm going to go grab the windshield graphic. Here's our windshield graphic. Let's get it on. I am going to align the edge over here first. It comes around. Almost perfect. I need to slide it a 32nd So we'll start it on this side and just back it off a little bit more. That looks fantastic. Just kind of floating it around here to get my lines a bit more even. That looks great. I'm just going to add a touch of heat here, not much. And I'm going to take my squeegee and go around like so. Careful. I'm going to use my rag to just soak up all this extra water that's laying down here because it just keeps sucking back up in on me. Use my hand because it can kind of flex around that curve better than the squeegee can. Going to continue around this front. Just like that. And there we go. At this point, it's done. What I'm going to do is let this sit out in the sun for the afternoon and bake. What that'll also do is it'll show me any water pockets that are stuck, and I can pop them with my X-Acto knife and then just let that water sort of just come out. It'll also bake on the rest of the graphics for me. I really like laying them out in the sun. If you don't have the sun, that's fine. Just let it sit somewhere warm in the house overnight and come back in the morning and inspect your work. Are there air pockets? Are there air bubbles that you missed? You know, again, I don't like to use heat to pop those. I just give them I use a super sharp pin or X-Acto blade, poke it, give it a little wiggle so the adhesive breaks apart, and you'll see the water come right out. All right, I have finished up Project SupersonicWake. Let me hold this big girl up here. There she is. Again, the reason I chose this theme, if you're kind of scrolling around the video here and you didn't know from the beginning, is because that's what my client who bought the boat off me wanted. It does have a metallic lake finish. There are a couple things that I wanted to mention here at the end of the video. Of course, if you're scrolling around, I did put this in the description that there's some important information you may want to read or watch here before you start the project. That information is as follows. If you recall in the beginning of the video, I told you that I had made some cutouts, little black and white cutouts that go around all of the knobs. Gives it a beautiful dress-up appeal. Same back here. Halfway through the installation, I realized I needed to add something else to the kit. And this will be in all the kits that start shipping out November 10th. So if you're watching this video and you didn't get these, just feel free to reach out to me via email and I can put some in an envelope and send them to you. It's only a few people that are waiting on this video really that need them. So again, anything after November 10th, it's going to be on the kit sheet. And what these things are is the matching, see if I can put this on a little bit of a white background here, like you can see what it is there. It's just a black dress-up graphic for the rollover holes. So you see the holes there? You do have to trim them out by hand. And what I found when I was trimming them out by hand was the plastic itself wasn't CNC routed out, I don't think. I think it's somehow punched out. And so it's kind of jagged on the actual boat itself. And my blade was following that jagged edge. And depending on the kit, you know, darker colored kits that are black, probably not going to be noticeable. But if that blade is following that jagged edge on the plastic, it doesn't look so great. So these fix that problem. If you don't like the way that it looks when you cut it out, these make it look absolutely stunning and perfect. I'm going to put a picture up in the corner over here so you can see what that looks like up close. Again, I really think that it captured and tightened up those things as well as the ones that are included for the other ports. So Some of the things I just want to cover that I noticed when I was doing this install, there are little dimples sort of in the plastic on some of these boats. You may not be able to see them before you start the graphics, but when you're squeegeeing the water out, the dimples tend to trap water. And I had quite a few water pockets. The bigger ones, you know, before it started to cure, I did get the water pockets into one bubble and pop it, and then just didn't use any heat. I just room temperature, you know, and pushed it down and the water came squirting out. When I was done with the install in general, and this is very typical of these graphic products, and I could put my head down, you know, against the glossiness in this case. Sometimes there's, you know, matte products, but if you do look down, you can see some residual bubbles that if you could stand there all day and it would seem like I got to get this one out and this one out. Just get the big ones out, because here's the trick. This is what I found over the years. I let this sit for a week because I had to go away on a business trip, and I came back and I knew this would happen, and it was perfect. I don't know. I wish I had the answer so that I could sound intelligent about it, but I don't. I don't know what happens to that moisture, that little bit of moisture that's trapped under the vinyl. You know, my knee-jerk reaction is, well, it's evaporating. Well, okay, but how? How's it getting through PVC? I mean, we use PVC to make pipes for water, so I don't know how it's getting through this vinyl. I don't know if it's that or if it's just becoming absorbed into the water-based, if it's a water-based adhesive. Some of the products are water-based adhesives. I'm not sure. Be patient. Don't take it out in the lake right away. Let it just sit in the house for a week, and you will see it happens so slow. It's almost like watching a child grow. You never really see them grow, right? It just disappears. Which is fine with me. I mean, you know, and it's good for you guys, because if you're a first-time installer and you're getting some bubbles and you just let it go for a little while. Now, again, you do need to pop the bigger ones. I'm talking about the ones that you really can only see, you know, those inequalities if you get down low. But I mean, I'm looking across this and it is as smooth as glass. So those are my tips. I do recommend, you could probably tape off the cap to cover up the blue and the yellow. I would recommend painting that a gloss black. The glossier it is, the higher the surface energy you're gonna have for the graphics to stick to. Of course, you wanna prep it, prime it, you know, figure out the best way to paint it that you're comfortable with. You don't have to paint it. You can obviously see, you know, there is a yellow line there where the original yellow was, but 95% of the boat is black, which is great. Like, that is the best color. The side strips, there is inequalities here where they seam it together. I think I covered this in the beginning of the video, but on the 6S Sonicwake, there's a definitive lip that goes all the way around. On this one, there's no definitive lip, and it's just this sort of ground down seam. So like the stock graphics, I made these graphics to just cover it completely. You will trap soapy water from your mixture in this seam that goes across, okay? I turned, you know, the boat sort of like so that the water could drain out via gravity, and I just very slowly worked it with a cloth wrapped around my finger, as you saw in the beginning of the video. Don't let that fluster you. I had the same issue. There's just nothing you can do about it. It's just going to settle in there. You could try a dry apply, but I wouldn't recommend it. When you do go to align these sides over here, I always try and center the artwork, whatever it may be, especially if it's a character, to align in about this area on boats. I can't control what happens as it comes up here, because when it's on the screen, it has to sit like this, these two parts right here. It doesn't, because this is shaped more like a banana actually, but it's when you install it that it looks straight across the boat. Not going to get into those details. I just ask you to trust me that, you know, we can only align a certain area. So you want to move the side here until you're happy with where you want the image to register, in this case, her face. And what I do is, if there's overhang back here, I just trim it off. And up here, it doesn't really matter in the front. The front will not come all the way up. And that's also by design. There's a lot of pressure up here where the water's coming up, okay? And You don't want the graphics all the way up there where there's not a lot of bite, not a lot of real estate for it to grab onto. And you'll notice on your stock graphics, they do keep them back there as well. One more thing I wanted to cover, and this really doesn't have anything to do with this graphics kit, but this customer asked me to do a protect skin on the bottom in a metallic flake finish, in case he hits a rock or something like that. So I did do that, and you can buy these. I don't know if the metallic flake is going to show up because it's so black, but yes, this has a clear, basically it's a PPF, but in metallic flake finish on the entire bottom of the boat, pre-cut to fit in it's two pieces, left side, right side on the bottom. They aren't crazy expensive because they're just, clear vinyl. But, if you're interested in protecting the bottom of your boat from scratches and things like that, it will do a good job. It does not, go over top of the raised profiles because it's just too much of a profile. But, it does go across the bottom. And in the future, I'm going to add some different designs for the bottom of the boat instead of just the clear. I think that actually would be cool. If it flips or, it's taken off, you absolutely will see a lot of the design. And I think that would be kind of neat. So here it is. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me. I'll continue to add more themes for the Sonicwake 8S. I know a lot of you guys were really excited for me to get this one done. It took me 3 months, I think. But here it is. Have fun and enjoy.